so much for joining us this afternoon, or actually this evening, for a real conversation about mental health, mental wellness, mental illness, whatever you want to call it, but mental health in the Black community. I am here with two beautiful women who are going to share their personal stories, give us some insight, and help us to get a little understanding about what it is to live with mental illness, some resources, and some things that you can do to help your loved ones or to help yourself if you are the one who is dealing with some mental health issues. My name is Amy Malone, and I am the owner of Girl in Charge Public Relations and the founder of the nonprofit organization Exhale. And it is a comfortable place for women of color to exchange ideas, to support each other, to uplift each other, and to move forward in a positive, bold way. I want my beautiful panelists to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their experiences and why this mental health conversation is so important. The first person I'd like to go to is Deanna Robinson. Hello, Deanna.
Hey there, Amy. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so thankful that you have agreed to share your story and to help our viewers and people listening to just take charge of their lives and to get some understanding with things that they are dealing with in their own homes. Please tell us a little about yourself, Dee.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for the invite. I am always happy to share my story with the hopes that I give a Black face to mental health conditions, and hopefully free people up to accept and to get help and to get treatment. So I was diagnosed at 29 years old with bipolar disorder with psychotic features, and that's for the sake of your audience, two poles, opposite poles of a mood disorder. That's like a bi, meaning two, and those two poles. One is high elevated mood, and the other is a deeply low mood. My symptoms, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with psychotic symptoms. And my symptoms manifested as hearing voices telling me that I'm Jesus come again, disguised as a Black woman. It always had an apocalyptic storyline of good versus evil. And psychosis is, as I'm explaining this, bipolar 1 with psychotic features. The psychotic features are what I'm describing, like you've lost touch with consensus reality. And so delusions and hallucinations come on board. So one of the delusions was that, I'm Jesus disguised as a Black woman. I'm the second coming. And, Bible verses would pop up in my mind to support delusions like, the one that talks about God coming in flaming fire with his mighty angels, taking vengeance on them that know not God, like being a person from a very small age, deeply entrenched in church and in faith. Like those Bible verses would just pop up, they just come up. The voice told me that I was going to be famous and have lots of money and be best friends with Kevin Hart and Rock. Now, who would not want to be best friends with Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart?
Was that specific? Like it was?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because it's really interesting that, there's a quote that says, the most brilliant people have the most persuasive demons. So every time I wanted to counteract what the voice would say, the voice would always be very, very careful with its words, because everything that I have been exposed to and experienced, the voice would like bring that back up to support a current position. So it's really interesting. I also had delusions, of political predictions of a civil war and Blacks moving back to Africa and taking all of our expertise and culture and skills and talents and going back to the land and naming, you know, the space that we settle on as Wakanda. I mean, it's specific like that.
Wow.
That I was going to.
Was that pre-Trump? Because that might not be a bad idea.
Right. But it was, and that's really something, Marla, because you know, The Voice told me that Trump was going to win, and that a civil war would come about. I'm like, no, this can't happen. So of course, when Trump won, that solidified some delusions, and it just kind of went on and on from there.
Wow.
You know, The Voice told me I was going to marry Hrithik Roshan, who's a Bollywood actor. The TV and radio were giving me special messages. There was an incident where I took off my clothes on the highway.
Okay, I don't want you to tell too much, because I want to actually delve into the conversation with you.
Okay,
and I would
absolutely.
love for you to start sharing.
I just wanted
yes.
to, and thank you for saying that, because that's why I asked you the question before.
Right.
Yes.
So that I kind of know where you want me to go here.
No, she wants all of that story. But
oh yes, I'm going to go back to that story.
Details, right? She just wants.
I gotcha. Right. Okay, so if we're going to go back, and you tell me, Amy, what you want.
I would love to know. Tell me about your new website, what you're doing right now to help others. Okay. and just, you know, who you are and what you're doing right now, and then we will move into some of your experience.
All right, thank you. So I have been around the National Alliance on Mental Illness for more than 18 years. In that capacity, I've you know, played some different roles, including international trainer and executive director, and just a host of other roles. I've helped to make videos for the University of Phoenix Network, for hospital emergency room staff across the country. Right now, I have an LLC called the Healing Conversationalist. And really, you know, we just kind of talk about hard, challenging stuff that, you know, folks just have a difficult time giving words to and giving voice to. And, you know, some of those things, you know, include talk around racism and racial trauma, healing from that, psychosis and spirituality. I do a lot of training. I'm a certified mental health first aid instructor for both adults and youth. I am also doing a lot of suicide prevention training. As a matter of fact, this coming Thursday, I'm doing suicide prevention training for the Black community. And I can certainly have some information about that upcoming event.
I love that.
So yeah, I've been around this for a while. I've been in and out of the hospital since 1997. Probably been in the hospital about 20 times, came into contact with police officers. So I have and now I train police officers. So I have like a wide breadth of information on this particular topic.
You've come full circle.
Yeah.
Truly come full circle. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. It shows how much experience you have and how much you have to share, how much insight you have to share with those who are watching us. I'd like to now introduce Ms. Marla Thomas. Marla, I would love for you to tell a little bit about yourself, about your organization, Loving Beyond Reason, and why you are involved with the mental health conversation.
Well, first, let me say this. Ironically, I'm glad that we were able to have Deanna on, because Deanna is a very big part of our story. Truth. So I appreciate the community needs, like we do need in these times of racial unrest. We need to unify. Yes. So she did that for us at our darkest time of need. So when I say our darkest time of need, people know me from various things. They know me, you know, now I have a name somewhat in real estate, but before that, you knew me from entertainment. You knew me from being Dave's wife of one of the members of the renowned group Take Six. Then I became the mother of notorious reality bad girl, Moniece Lene Slaughter. I didn't become that. I didn't make her that, but I love her no matter what. So, but that's one of the things that I'm known for, or to be. And then we had the unfortunate public incident of my son battling with a very severe mental health challenge, which is exactly as Deanna describes it in its clinical diagnosis as bipolar 1 with schizoaffective disorder or psychotic feature. I don't know, she can correct me, but for D, we were told, you know, schizoaffective disorder. And ironically, that was not our first diagnosis. So we'll get into that as we go on, that how the diagnosis travels. There's a, you know, it's not as static as people think it is, but through what happened with our son, you know, things you would never, let me just say this. I now know as a minority that one of the things that was shocking to us was mental health challenges are an indictment to Black people, not a clinical condition that can be managed and dealt with. And we fell in that category. So what would be the reason that this would happen to my son? He had 2 loving parents. We were very attentive. We were there. We were, you know, we had, you know, a nice home. And we Dave and I have been married a million years. We've been married forever. But the bottom line is, yet as life would have it, we were facing the worst crisis, a club that I don't care if it was my worst enemy, I don't want anybody else in it. Because you can't fix it, you can't stay and you don't understand it. And I have to say that, you don't understand it. So because of that crisis, that tragedy for us, and it was tragic. I can make it look pretty, but I'm not going to because it's not real. It's heartbreaking. And I put it to you like this, anybody listening and anybody who would know, one of the things that I want you to understand, if you're pregnant with a baby that has a malady or a condition in utero, and the doctor says, hey, you know, you're unfortunately, we've done an ultrasound, we got, you know, we have news that's probably not favorable for you and your husband, your baby has spina bifida. What does that mean? Well, it looks like this and it acts like this, and this is the life expectancy of your child, and it's very tragic and blah, 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 but you still have a choice. So when 2 parents make a choice to go forward, when your child has, you understand that from birth, you're prepared for the care. When you give birth to somebody, the brain is an organ. We don't consider that the organ can actually malfunction. The organ can have differences of the brain. And so it looks normal until it isn't, which for us was DJ's full diagnosis was 23, but we saw a lot of severe behavioral issues early on. And you feel robbed. So with that, when he went through his crisis, I have never been more overwhelmed, more devastated, more shocked, more assaulted at the mental health care system. And the lack of, they don't even want to hear you, much less, and God forbid, if you think we all as Black people suffer anyway. I mean, in other words, we're born running uphill or walking or crawling or climbing or scraping or, you know, digging our way to something that we think is going to be productive and we're going to be able to make it to this thing. We have the weight we carry by birth. Now imagine you have also a mental health challenge. And so with that incident, that reality, when David and I talked to Deanna, who came on our show, when David and I were at our last moment of, we don't even know how we're going to get through this, and we found NAMI. Once we were on the other side, which is just the ability to breathe. There were no solutions. We still haven't fully solved it. It's not a fixed scenario, but when that happened, I told David, oh my God, we have more resources in our community than the average person. My mother was the chief executive nurse of the VA. We have more connections and possibilities, whether, you know, whatever. And we're here. What about Karen? Not white Karen. What about Kathy? What about, they don't love their children more than me.
Right.
They just have no chance, because what we were coming up against was the whole system was saying, you're gonna have to kind of make a choice here. Either it's you or you're gonna have to put your son out. So you can't, because no help was available. The meds are expensive and ridiculous. The treatment is almost unaffordable to what we really need. So to me, from that, this is what gave birth to Loving Beyond Reason. David and I literally made a commitment. We were like, you know what? Even if we lose our son, this fight needs to be fought. And the first thing I said was, when I prayed in tears, legs weak, tired, I said, God, why me? I'm asking, why me? And what God said was, it had to be you. Because if it were not your children, you would not take up this cross and walk. So that's how Loving Beyond Reason was born. And we are determined to join forces with Deanna and anyone else who truly is going to move this measure forward, because we are 2 times as a minority population more affected, diagnosed or undiagnosed, and less than 1% willing to actually get a diagnosis and get help. And that is a problem, because we look at mental health as an indictment against us as parents and as a people, instead of
we're going to delve into that. We're going to definitely discuss that conversation.
You would not be pissed off at somebody who had freaking cancer. You would not take somebody who said, oh my gosh, I got such and such. Oh, you know what? Well, you're going to jail. Not going to happen. You don't recognize brain difference. You refuse, you ignore it. And not only do you ignore it, you further fracture by the one thing that everybody who's brain different needs, which is connection, love, understanding, acceptance. You isolate it and you put it in jail and you punish it. Punish the already suffering person and further exacerbate their fractures. What are we doing? I'm done.
Well, you know what?
Bye.
I'm going to tell you before you go further. One of the things you touched on something, and it's the perfect segue into our conversation. Before we got on today, I received a call from someone who has a child and is desperate to get help. She knows her son has brain differences. She knows her son is suffering from mental illness, but she's gone to the hospital, she's spoken to doctors, and they refuse to admit him. They didn't give her any help that was significant. And this young lady is literally at her wit's end because she wants to get help for her child, and all she is getting is, we cannot admit him, we will not admit him, check with this organization or check with this doctor, or see what and if your resources are not there, if you don't know where to go, if you are not someone, because if this is something, like you said, it can hit you out of the blue and you finally realize, you know what, it's not my child acting out, it's not that, he's crazy or he's anything like that, any of the words that people like to use. It can be simply, my child has a brain difference. And I never heard the word brain difference. I never heard those words before I met you.
Right, Marla and Dave came up with that.
Yeah, I never heard that, but it makes sense.
Yes.
It makes sense. It's brain differences. So what I would like for you to do, I'm going to go back to Deanna.
I was going to flip to Deanna just now too, because I was going to ask her, to be honest, just listening to you, Amy, not to direct conversation, but to be in line with it. I wanted to know for Deanna, what age, that's
the question. When did you know? At what age did you? We are here. I don't want to put my nails up because yours look really good and mine look like I've been in quarantine for
Amy,
5 months.
I'm going to be in a fire.
Here.
When you come to my funeral, my nails are going to be fly.
But Deanna, I'd like to know, when did you first realize something was wrong? Did your parents realize, there was something going on? Did your friends, or did you personally realize there was a problem?
Well, I believe that my family knew that there was something that was amiss. I have an older sister and a younger brother, but I was the only one that got a big sister. And I know I'm dating myself. I don't know if they still have big brothers and big sisters, but my mom got me one, not my brother or my sister. And I was 8 years old at the time. As I grew older, I knew that something just wasn't right. And so I left home at a very early age. And at 18, I took myself to see someone, to see a therapist. And quite honestly, didn't get a lot of meaningful help. And I continued to be challenged for quite some time. It wasn't until I had my first bipolar episode that I suspected that, things weren't quite right, because, generally people don't take off their clothes on the highway in the middle of rush hour traffic. Like, something's wrong there. But I didn't want to accept it. So I acknowledged it, but the acceptance didn't come until, and now I got diagnosed when I was 29. I really didn't get to acceptance until 7 years later. And there were a lot of barriers there. One, and first and foremost, is stigma. And in the Black community, a lot of us are steeped deep in faith. I was a preacher's kid and went to church every other day, just really, really entrenched in church. So the belief was that if you behaved oddly, acted, said things, you were possessed with demons, or you were inherently bad, bad character, flawed. And you certainly needed to be prayed over, you needed to have faith, and, all this other stuff, like the actual understanding that it is a medical condition was non-existent. It was always, something's wrong with me. And that was, man, was that harmful. That's just some harmful stuff. And unfortunately, we still experience a lot of that today. Talking about, faith and religion and, spiritual matters. And listen, I'll be the first to tell you, those things are important. Those things are important. But we wouldn't say, pray cancer away. We wouldn't say, pray diabetes away.
If you break your arm, nobody says to you, you know what, you need to identify more with Christ and that will heal.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So that was a huge barrier. And the fact too that, I had kids, I was smart, reasonably funny, had a good job, married, all that. I'm like, somebody like me can't have a mental health condition, even though right in front of me was all of this outrageous behavior. So it wasn't until, 7 years later, coming into contact with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. First, before that, I actually went to school and learned about the biology of mental illness, heard other people share their stories that were very similar to mine. I couldn't believe that people were actually articulating my experiences. I'm like, what is going on here? And then, what's that? Right.
Following me.
So then I got involved in NAMI, and the rest, as they say, is history. And I learned again more about the biology of mental illness, seeing other people who were going through the same things that I was going through, being able to talk to them, being and I got really lucky too. I finally got to some resources, therapists, psychiatrists, groups that were helpful. The thing that I found to be most helpful, though, is peer support. Like, just being able to be in meetings and, talk to people who are just like me. Therapy is good. I just haven't found it as effective as I have, peer support. Also, I take an antipsychotic and a mood stabilizer. I take those faithfully because even on medication, I have gone into psychosis. So You know, one of the things that I'm working with right now is, you know, spirituality and psychosis, since many people who experience psychosis have a religious storyline. The doctors call it hyper-religiosity. And that happens with a lot of us. Go ahead, Marla.
No, I was saying, that's, you always give me new information.
Right. That's an interesting one to me.
No, yeah, because let me just say this. Today, I was talking to a friend who's in town, and she and I were speaking, and I said, you know, it's interesting to me. I was saying, I know I don't have the capacity and time, but I'm so driven to want to study the brain when it comes to these differences, because what I now know is that there's almost a common script between those who suffer from the same similar, DJ's in Deanna's diagnosis scope, and he's God, he's, you know, the God, the grandiosity, earlier, for those who missed it, Deanna said that, you know, she knew who she was going to be married to. There were clear voices, and that's the script. And so what I'm saying is, that's very interesting. And I was like, you know, David and I were talking. I said, I don't know what that is. That it's because I was debunking the misnomers, and we'll get into that. But it's interesting. Keep going, because I didn't know what happened.
Let me say this. Let me ask this question really quickly, Marla. I know Deanna described a bit about what she went through and how she first learned that, you know, there were some things going on with her. How did you first come to understand that something was going on with DJ?
Well, that history is deep for us. Number one, you know, as a preteen, DJ had gotten involved with drugs.
Okay.
And I say it in that way because with the type of family and parents that we were, again, so far outside the box, no permission there, you know, it was like, what? And you knew, but you didn't really know until it got all the way to heroin. So we thought, and again, as a parent, you're giving credit, like you're like, okay, not okay to that, but you understand that there's a certain amount of teenage rebellion, there's an acceptance of misbehavior from your teenage child. You were a kid, so if you really stop tripping and lying to yourself about yourself, you're like, you know what, I wasn't, you know, and I didn't go down that road, but I was not, pregnant at 18. Need I say more? So what I'm saying to you is that you rationalize that. You rationalize, you become more patient in that, but then you keep going, and the behavior goes past that to deeper and more important extremes. And we started to notice like social cues, high school. Then for us, it was the big fracture moment. He was 23. So DJ had checked into rehab at 21, totally clean of drugs. Shout out to DAP if you're a young man who needs help. And I would never endorse anybody, but they're amazing. It's an 18-month residential program.
Okay.
But he went there, then he put himself in college. And 2 years, he was a straight A student. And then at 23, he fractured. What does fracture mean? That's what you're wondering. Well, it looks like this. He calls home. Every day I talk to my kids. And I said, hey, how's your today? That's what I used to say. And, okay, Dave is asking me to move. So I'm gonna say this one thing, and then I'm going to go downstairs. And we'll get into the reasons why in a minute.
Okay.
But
Tell Dave I said, hey, Marla.
Deanna said, so I want to pitch forward just for 1 second, just so I can relocate, because it's super important. It's important. Okay. I'm good, but keep talking, because I'm gonna talk to Deanna. But
you're gonna relocate. Okay, very good.
Responsibility to remind me of where the place mark is, because I'm gonna turn my camera off, because there's no need for you to walk with me through my house. No.
So 23. That's it. 23 is your mark. DJ at 23. Okay, we got you.
So get back to Deanna. I'll be right back. I'm moving.
Very good. So Deanna, So while Marla is moving around, I want you to tell a little more. Once you realized something was wrong, what did you do?
Marla is so funny.
Did you go to families first? Did you go to church? Did you go? Because I know you said you're a PK, right? Did you say you're a PK?
I am.
Okay, so when you first realized, were you afraid to tell your family? Did you speak to them first, or what? How did you react? What did you do?
Yeah, the sequence of events weren't quite like that.
Okay.
I had a psychotic break, and during that break, I landed out on the highway, and in the middle of rush hour traffic, I had blacked out. I was driving in my car, got out of the car. A gentleman saw what happened, and he called the police. He, saw that I was behaving strangely, and he called the police, and they came out and got me and took me to the hospital. I stayed in the hospital for probably a month. I was really upset and really sad, really, confused and angry really that, people were putting me in the hospital. At that time, I didn't really grasp the severity of what was happening with me. And somebody gave me a brochure while I was in the hospital, and it was describing some of the things that I was just going through. So there was a little opening there to acknowledge that something was wrong. But again, because, Black people are taught, you have to be strong, your faith has to be strong, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, nothing's wrong, you better get it together, just keep going, and if you act any other different way, you're trifling, you're this, you're that, and the other things, very critical and judgmental. So my family was definitely not the place that I went to first. Church was not the place that I went to first to understand what I was going through. It really wasn't until I went to study the biology of mental illness, heard about serotonin and dopamine and neurotransmitters and synapse and how, just the brain carries messages from one to the other. And if I have too much of some or too little of others, then, that opens me up for, behaving, feeling, and thinking oddly. And then I started to see, from listening to other people's stories and hearing what they were saying, I really started to think differently about myself, because up to that time, it was always, I was bad. I'm 29 years old, and I have a bunch of kids, and I'm still feeling this way. And so I started to change the way that I saw myself. I certainly wouldn't tell a paraplegic, get up off your butt, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, go and get a doggone job. Why don't you lazy, trifling thing?
Right.
Not in a million years would I do that. So
and no one else would.
Right, and no one else would either. So I stopped telling myself, sort of similar things, and began to be more patient, educated myself more, got more involved with NAMI, and really started to become an activist, an advocate, and really helping other people. That's where a lot of my healing has come from, just from being able to help other people. Now, listen, make no mistake about it. A year ago, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which, bipolar disorder is episodic. It comes, it goes, it's chronic, over, long period of time. Schizoaffective, in my mind, it's a bump up to more severe, because I have symptoms of schizophrenia, which are, the delusions and the hallucinations and things like that.
Can I ask you this? Can you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I would like to be specific. I'd like our audience to know what is bipolar? When you say you're bipolar, or you were diagnosed with being bipolar, what is that?
So bi meaning two opposite poles. One is when I'm in a high elevated mood. The other is when I'm in a lowered mood. So when the high elevated mood manifests, I can, hear a voice, and the voice tells me, that I'm Jesus, I'm the second coming, I'm gonna have a lot of money, gonna be friends with celebrities, I spend a lot of money, again, disrobing and all license plates and bees buzzing, dogs barking, everything, is stimuli. on the lowered side, and that's, by the way, the apocalyptic story that I go through is horrifying. It's terrifying. And, you know, people ask a lot of times, well, do you remember what happened when it's over? I absolutely do. And the feelings that come along with it is I'm horrified. It is a very, very scary place to be in. The place that doesn't get the attention is depression, because it's not, you know, interfering with anybody else. It's not odd and, you know, and grandiose behavior. So that manifests itself being very difficult to get out of bed, not wanting to really engage in life, not answering phones, you know, not answering email, difficult to shower, all that kind of stuff there. So when I say bipolar, that's what it means. Schizoaffective, bipolar type is what I have. Now I hear the voice all the time. I experience, and I neglected to say this, I experience hallucinations in all senses. So I smell, I taste, I see, I hear, and I feel. I even felt like I was having labor pains when it was impossible for me to have children. So that's sort of some of the things, some of the things that.
Wow. That's amazing, because someone from the outside looking in, unless someone describes it as clearly as you just described it, you don't understand. You look at people and say, what is going on with them? They need to go to the doctor. They, you know, but you just don't, you know, it's easy to say, you know, what's wrong with them, and to kind of just shun someone and not understand they're hurting. It's not a fun thing. It's not, you know, sometimes I hear people say things like, you know, they just need to get it together. No, no one asked to feel this. No one asked for this, you know. It's something that it's a part of you, who you are, and you have to learn to handle it and deal with it. And it's not, you know, it's not for me or anyone else to look at you and point the finger and say, and ask what's wrong with you. You know, it's to ask, how can I help you? What can I do to support you, you know, while you're going through this?
I always say that people like me and DJ, Marla's son, you know, we're not sissies. mental illness is not for sissies.
Right.
It is very difficult to live with on a day-to-day basis. I literally have to be conscious and intentional and purposeful every single minute of every single day, which is why I find it a lot of times a way of coping is to just veg out. Like I can't handle all the stimuli. I can't handle all the thoughts. You know, generally people have between 50 and 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. You know, people like me and DJ, you know, how about quadruple that? There's a lot going on there. And so sometimes it's just easier to
I can't imagine.
Yeah. So one of the things too that I wanted to mention real quick before Marla starts is that, you know, recovery is not linear. And, you know, one of the things that I think about, you know, because we're specifically talking about the Black community and how we, you know, there are things that are common to all people, like, you know, having enough money, having housing, food, all that kind of stuff. And so that stuff alone, trying to just keep up with the life that we live and the way that we live it is enough to make anybody mad, right? Black people have added layers because we have all of this, you know, complex trauma, you know, racial trauma, disparities in healthcare and education and housing. And we are exposed and re-exposed to the trauma of our people being brutalized and dehumanized by police. And we don't just see it here, we see it everywhere, where our lives don't matter as much as other lives do. And so there are, you know, unfortunately, we are underserved and underrepresented in the mental health realm. So I'm glad that, you know, Marla is doing what she's doing. I feel very grateful to be able to do what it is I do, and that certainly educate the masses. And I'm so glad that, you know, I got this skin. I love this skin that I'm in. And, you know, my hope is that people who look like me, you know, let go of the myths of Black people don't go to therapy. That's a white thing. It don't happen. Our kids are dying at much higher rates by suicide than any other population or race. Our kids, really? Like ages like 5, I think it's like 5 to 12. I mean, shockingly young ages.
I never hear that. Yeah. I never hear that. I didn't know that. Marla, we want to flip back over to you.
Deanna, I can go away and Deanna can hold my picture up and everything she's saying. Deanna doesn't need.
I had no idea.
Amy, and this is, and I'm glad you're saying that, because let me say this, and this is not even about our history or whatever. Everything that she's saying is the thing that I've been screaming to the mountaintops. I've been saying, hey, the emperor has no clothes, and thank God for extremes, because now people are like, wait, she's been standing out there that whole time.
She said that. Yes.
So what I want to say is this. Deanna can attest that I want to bust up some myths before we get out of here.
Yes.
Number one, everyone says, oh, I've been asked more times if I could get paid for it, I would have a mansion. Well, you know, Dee was a drug addict. So don't you think that that's what kind of fractures brain? I said, I'm gonna give you 2 truths. Number one, everyone who does drugs is not mentally ill. But most mentally ill people that I know have had a substance issue. And the substance issue is because generally they are trying to self-medicate to deal with a problem that they cannot find the means to fix, because it's inexplicable and it's unacceptable all at the same time. And it's worse in the Black community. Number 2, the fracturing point for mental illness, like Deanna talked about stimuli, is stress. Black people are born stressed out.
Yes.
I need you to understand. Let me say it again. We are stressed out. We're born, like I said earlier, you're born, every Black person in the United States of America is born at the bottom of a big giant ass mountain. And you have to figure out how to start crawling from the time you can actually put your brain to a pulse to move muscles. You got to go uphill. Facts. For most people in the African American community do it with no tools, no hooks, no rope, no climbing shoes, naked with claws, and scraping our way to the top of everything. That's stressful. Stress is a thing. So what I'm saying is, I need us to understand that I get frustrated at the lack of understanding. And when I say the lack of understanding, what Deanna is sharing with you, let me give you this brief history. Deanna, as God would have it, David, as most people know, Dave and I had a talk show for years called the Marla and Dave Show. And when we got into the situation with DJ, we started looking to understand mental health. And we reached out to NAMI, and the president of NAMI San Fernando Valley, Kim Bonnell, was scheduled to come and be a guest on our show. Kim, nor anyone in his immediate family, is a sufferer, but he's dedicated to the cause as somebody who's an administrator. He's the president. He sent Deanna. Deanna, we had no idea of her personal affected history. So halfway through the show, which I encourage you all to go back in the archives and look at, I said, wait, you have his diagnosis and you're here? Like, and she can articulate.
And you're functioning and
booming to the floor. And so basically when David and I walked out of that actual show, that day was the first day. By then we had given up. Our son was on the street. And we were like, wait a minute. So there is basically some light and consciousness at the end of this tunnel. We had no idea. So we weren't there yet, but at least we knew that we were traveling in a direction where there could be some relief.
Yes.
And so I will forever be grateful to Deanna and God for bringing us to this understanding. But my thing now, and this is super important as well, stop having the conversation of 3 things no one wants to hear. it has to be your demon possessed. It has to be the devil. You just need to pray more.
You can just pray it away. You can pray it away. You can pray it. And I believe in the power of prayer. But people, that is not the answer.
Right. Number 2, oh, you're depressed? Just think of something happy. Get up and go do something. Basically, fix yourself. And so my thing is, and then number 3, please, I'm begging you, stop treating mentally brain different people like they're not intelligent. This lady, because she's operating at a higher frequency, they have to come down on some level to what is in common for most of us. Because the parts of their brain that are firing and they're utilizing, and the thing about it is, it's true. It's not within our consensus norm. This is consensual norm. Deanna and I talked about this. It's not inside that norm, but it's who you are. So understanding it and making sure, like everything else, COVID, real estate, health and safety are the only reasons that there needs to be control. I want to be sure that I want to keep you safe, and I want to be sure that others are safe. And I get into it all the time. Oh, my phone was dead. I know my Instagram family's going to be mad. I get mad all the time because I feel like that when I talk about health and safety, people are in this mindset that essentially you're here and you're dealing and you're treating people because you don't understand it. In a lot of cases, medicine is only necessary so I can keep you in this consensus reality. So one of the things that I share with my friends, she's brilliant. There's not an unintelligent person that I know of. It's just that sometimes they're relating on extremes that we can't understand or relate to. So my job now is to be a bridge. I need to understand and accept DJ and Deanna and whoever else is affected. And the reason that I need that is because I understand. I would have been you, and I was you until it was my children who were affected.
Right.
It's scary. Right. I don't know what to do to the person on the street that's, I feel threatened by somebody talking to themselves. I get it, because it's not what you would do. Right. But what I want everybody to understand, and I really want us to start to step outside, and it's time for this now. We have to educate. We have to listen to Adina Robinson, who is one of the rare ones who can articulate it. We have to accept that it's a brain difference. We have to continue to love and not ostracize, shame, add a stick, be quiet, go into a hole. Because if you can stop and speak with her, if you can stop and listen, and we are a community that if we can encourage breaking the silence responsibly, we can begin healing, because healing is clinical. It's not an ethereal thing. It's real.
Well, that's what I want to say before you continue, Marla, is stop making people feel ashamed or trying to put them in, close them off in a room somewhere so no one sees them if they come out. If someone comes over to visit, close them off in a room or in the bed, just kind of those things you've seen on television, those things those images that come to mind when you think of, mental illness and mental health. It's not something to be ashamed of. And that's one of the things that I'm so impressed with when it comes to speaking with Deanna, and even when it comes to speaking with you, Marla, because it's a lot of people don't want to talk about it. It's a shame. And to be bold about that that's the most courageous thing and powerful thing that I can think of to have that discussion.
I want to flip back to Deanna, but this is because it's in line with this particular moment in conversation. I woke up Monday morning and I was in tears. Why, Marla? Were you in tears? Well, Lexi, my daughter, who's a news producer, I missed it, but I was sent the video of Kanye West. And I have a message for all of us as a Black community. Please, please, please. I know this is news. Candace Owens, Kanye West, anything that is going to damage our community, stop sharing it. This is suffering. We can control what if it's not going to be productive, I'm not telling you not to see it. I'm telling you, don't circulate it. Because in reality, we don't want to help. We are the culprits of our own, we're jesters to our own demise. These things are detrimental. And unfortunately, it's not funny. And I told Dave, I was sad because people are laughing and I get it. But what I feel like is because I'm on the other side of something on a deeper understanding, there's help that's needed here. And it's tough. And I get the whole thing, the stigma, all of it. So what I would just like to say is there is at least that small part we can pay attention and change the narrative for ourselves. Because if it's not going to positively represent where we're trying to go, don't let it be something you show. Deanna.
And, this is what I'm going to say, because we only have a short time left. I want to make sure that anything that you feel people need to walk away from this conversation with a new understanding of, is there something that you feel, if you know nothing else, take this from this conversation? And Deanna, I'm going to throw this to you. What is it that you feel people need to understand about mental illness, and how can someone help? And I don't like to say it because I hate to make people sound like a victim. I don't want to sound like that. But if there is someone that, like a Kanye West, a friend who sees another person spiraling and they just don't know what to do, I need to know what your recommendation is. So Deanna, I'm asking you these questions.
Well, like I talk about in training, one of the most powerful things that we can do for someone who is going through what they're going through is to make a kind approach, ask an open-ended question, and listen. It does not matter how nonsensical you think it sounds. Just listen. Because it's really about building trust, building a rapport, so that the person may be more open to taking a suggestion that you throw out. Like perhaps, going to talk to somebody else like me, which we can be the most persuasive to one another because we know what the experience is, and we can be kinder and gentler than most people. So I think that it's really powerful to listen and not try to fix. That you can offer up alternatives, but don't try to fix. Because one of the things that is most powerful, and I think Marla and Dave, when I first met them, were like, wow, this is kind of unbelievable, is as much as you want to try to fix and help and, get them into treatment right away, get them on medication right away, or, whatever your desires might be, honest to goodness, it took me 7 years to accept that I had a mental health condition. And it wasn't going to be something that somebody admonished me to do. It just didn't work out that way. What happened was I decided that I didn't want my life to be interrupted like it was being interrupted all the time anymore. And it was scary to hear voices and see hallucinations and experience all this stuff in my body. So if there's one thing that I can tell folks who are listening, be kind and watching, be kind, be compassionate, and give a listening ear. And, one of the things that I want to say to our people, most particular, we need love like a river, like flowing like a river, just compassion and kindness, because everybody else, I know I'm speaking in generalities, but understand where I'm coming from. Everybody else trying to do us harm. So and look, all the microaggressions and, there's just so much stuff going on. It is really clear that, as a system, we are thought of the least in terms of value. So we really have to support and take care of each other, however that shows up. And, you know, most particularly in the faith community, man, that's my community right there. Because, you know, stuff has been said in church that is so harmful to people like me. OMG. Listen, that is why it has taken me 30 years to like really think practically about my condition, rather than to just spiritualize it, you know, or to think of it in ways that don't particularly help me in the long run. So faith leaders and community, you know, man, they could be a powerhouse, because a lot of our people spend time there, right? And just have such deep faith, a powerhouse in terms of treatment and recovery. So, you know, hopefully if folks who are listening, you know, maybe, you know, talk about it to your faith leaders, you know, reach out to me. I can certainly give my email. You know, if you need somebody to come into, you know, your organization, your church, to, you know, just sort of be a face and a voice, so that people who are suffering because of some of the things that are said in church might be able to get some help, because the leaders are shifting their consciousness as far as mental health goes.
Awesome. So this is what I would like to do. I'm gonna ask you, Marla, in just a moment, but I want to do this really quickly. Deanna, I'm going to ask you to come back for a part 2, because there's so much. There's so many layers to unfold here, and we just can't get to it all in one session.
Sure, absolutely.
So what I'd like for you to please do is to give your information. If someone wants to contact you, how would they do that?
They can reach me. I hope you all have your phones or pens and pencils ready with a sheet of paper.
And I'm going to actually put it on screen once
awesome. So it's DEANNA at thehealingconvo.com.
Got you. So it's Deanna at thehealingconvo.com. Thank you so much, Deanna. I mean, you are an incredible woman. I have to just tell you, you are truly incredible, and your story and your transparency, your rawness, it's what's needed. And you don't get that very often. And you articulate it so beautifully, and I have to thank you for that.
Absolutely,
Marla,
my pleasure.
Yes, you are awesome, and I'm going to contact you because we are going to plan part 2.
All right.
Okay. Marla, I want to throw to you, and I'd like your closing thoughts and just what you want to make sure people walk away from this conversation with, and ask you to, will you please be a part of our second conversation, and we can make sure Dave is a part of that one as well.
I'd like to say goodnight. I told you before that all I have to do is hand the baton to Deanna, and I'm done. Deanna's everything. I mean, here's my thing, and I'm going to speak from a parental standpoint. She really did, honestly. I'm not trying to be funny. I am, and that was funny, but she hit the most important part. The reason that our foundation is called Loving Beyond Reason is because I know that we are also as much tragedy as that we have survived with managing our son and his mental health issues. I also know without a shadow of a doubt that it is actually the unconditional love and acceptance that has actually saved our son.
Yes.
We're very rare. People who write me, they're like, wait a minute, he's willing to take his meds? I'm like, we don't ever discount his thoughts, his feelings. When he says to us, hey, you know, he's, again, never mistake mental illness in this type of brain difference for a learning disorder or a mental handicap. It's not true. So they know what they are in another reality, but they understand where they've been fully. Mm-hmm. It's not like, you know, the Matrix where you are Men in Black where you shine the light. So for me as a parent, there's an environment that we have, David and I, through education and information and prayer and long suffering, have come to create for DJ. Once we got him out of jail, once we, you know, we're in a cohabitating loving position, we keep the stress at 0. We never discount how he feels, and we allow him to be who he is with safe and loving boundaries. Mm-hmm. So, for example, as his parents, we respect the fact that he's 30, but at the same time, in order for us to coexist in this environment, you must be on your medication. But when you have complaints about your health issues or whatever, we don't say, boy, we don't just take the meds. We go to the, and we run full panels, and we let him be in control of his situation. Like Deanna, he hears voices constantly, even on meds. And he calls it his network. So when things get right, he calls it the network. There's audible hallucinations in his head. I call it an insulated reality, which is we'll get into in the next one. But as a parent, I've stopped applying random pressure of, boy, what are you doing? You need to get a job. Well, let me just say this before we go. I want all of you guys, and I learned this in NAMI Family to Family. When we did the family exercise, I left in tears. And here's the one time I was in tears in the car. We set one person in the middle of the room, and you had 3 people behind you, and you had one instructor in front of you, and the instructor was giving you an actual task, draw a circle. Mm-hmm. And she's giving you directions. And then she would point, everybody knew what they had to do behind. They had a script to read. And now point to one. So she's talking. One person starts a random story. The next person, number 2, you go. No one behind you stopping. And then the people behind you start arguing and fussing with each other or having full-on conversations, but you're trying to focus. How am I supposed to keep a job like that? How am I supposed to be clear like that? And and if you can imagine, like Deanna said, it's overwhelming. Our thoughts, and I'll break it down, 50 thoughts, and I know that she's got more of a statistical truth, 50 thoughts to her 50,000 coming in different directions. As you have to function in life, get out of here. None of us, I would be like, it's paralyzing. Yet she's here and she's functioning. So what I is be compassionate.
Yes.
Stop.
Yes.
Stop ostracizing. Stop pushing it under the rug. Face it. And I say all the time to my son, D, unfortunately, that's your reality. And I wish I could relate, but I can't because that's not where I live. But I will tell you this, we love you to death. And you are special because you have emotional gills and emotional lungs. I only have lungs. And I want you with me. You're the only one that can make the adjustment. So when you go into the water, you can still breathe. I can't survive out there. So I need you. So you have to do the work. If you love, I know he does. And other than that, I've accepted the fact that we will facilitate what needs to happen as long as this boundary of safety is kept. And that's a big step. Black parents, we put a lot of pressure on our children who suffer with mental illness because we have a lot of pressure on ourselves.
On ourselves, yes. And so many expectations, and we don't want to let anyone down, and that's a big problem. Marla, please let everyone know where they can find Loving Beyond Reason.
I'm going to let them know that, and I'm going to say this: lovingbeyondreason.org is our foundation. We have a lot of amazing things for those who are looking for masks. We have masks for mental health. My mom's an amazing custom mask maker with some incredible designs, and proceeds go as well to the foundation. Please support that. It's easy. Just go to lovingbeyondreason.org, hit mask for mental health, put your order in, it'll be done. But at the same time, I also have to just jump out, Amy, if you don't mind, starting this Friday, because all of this is help for the community. Our good friend and medicinal chemist, Dr. Milton Brown, will be joining me on a new series live every Friday at 6:00 p.m. on my Instagram, Marla Talks. And we're now doing a series called COVID Updates for our community. because there's a misinformation and truths, and we have a lot of things. And as long as giving the information, as well as giving the information, we're going to give you tools to survive this deadly scenario under this current administration. I will tell you guys this, just to give you a wee bit. They are now trying to move to unroll schools, children going back to school, by doing it in phases. And the first phase is all the minority kids. We'll see how that goes. Then we'll bring in the other kids. That's an actual
stuff. And
so what I'm saying to you is we got to get it. We can't do anything, everybody. Don't ask me ever in life if you can help me if you're not willing to collect the information and get the education, because your help will not meet the standard of what needs to happen. So if you really want to help Deanna, please, by the way, we're here to give you the education, but you have to be willing to receive it.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
And
so,
Deanna, one more time for you, because I think that it's so necessary that you lead these groups and you're going to churches and schools. And one more time, the healing conversationalist.
Yeah, the healing conversation.
Marla, you better stop taking my place. I was going to throw back to you. Go ahead, Gina. I was playing.
Yeah, it's called the Healing Conversationalist, and my official launch is going to be the middle of next month. But for now, you could reach me at Deanna@thehealingconvo.com. I am actively doing trainings and speaking engagements and things of that nature. So I put in, Amy, the chat box here on Zoom, a link to mental health, Black mental health resources. And I also put a link in for the QPR suicide prevention training that I'll be doing on Thursday. You can go to, for the Black community, you can go to that Linktree link and fill out the form. And our wonderful youth programs director will be in touch to, give you all the deets on what's going to happen on Thursday and how you can show up.
And I will thank you again, Deanna. Thank you. I can't say thank you enough for sharing and being so open with us. I will make sure that I provide all the contact information, the links and everything that you guys have given us. The resources are amazing, and this couldn't have gone any better. And I'm so proud of you ladies, and I'm excited about what you're doing. And we have to have another conversation because there's just so much more to share. So thank you both. I will make sure that everyone has all of the info for part 2. It's coming very soon. I would like to do it within the next 2 weeks. So I will get with you two ladies and we will make this happen.
All right, Amy.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you.
I would like to thank Yasmin, Brenda, and Deanna for being our live audience. Thank you for those.
Yes.
If you're wondering why they were quiet, is because we took their mics away. So, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Yasmin, thanks for coming. We see you. We love you. We appreciate you. Now, everybody doesn't have to go anywhere. You don't have to leave, but you got to get the hell out of here. That's all I'm saying.
So good night, everyone. Thank you.
Amy, real quick, I just thought about it in my mind, perhaps for part 2, because I know that folks probably, and I don't know how many people you had tuning in on Facebook Live, but I'm sure that, people have a lot of questions to ask and would love to provide folks with answers. So perhaps we can do this. We will be doing a Q&A. We'll actually be doing a Q&A in part 2. We were going to do that in this one as well, but again, we had a little technical issues. So we will have those worked out and we will be doing a Q&A in part 2. All right. Thank you for having me again. Good night, everyone. Marla, it's always great to see your beautiful face, and everybody else have a great mental health day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.